Start again. Thank you for coming along to this workshop this morning, the fourth in our series of workshops to replace the conference that had to be cancelled in December because of Storm Dara. These are being organised by PACE and EGIN. PACE is Powis Action on the Climate Emergency, as a network of organisations across Powis to try to network and link up and share best practice across all of the different organisations in Powis to tackle the climate and nature emergencies. EGIN is the project that is trying to bring to help communities by getting them to give peer support to each other to help them to introduce or to start climate and nature related projects. So this workshop is about the Dark Skies Initiative, the initiative to try to reduce the amount of light pollution that we get in our skies. So light pollution destroys critical wildlife habitat. So we're going to learn how it affects both plants and animals, and such as migratory birds, bats, songbirds, insects, and salmon. As the effects of light pollution is understood more, a list of plants and wildlife affected by it grows, and it's not just animals, it's humans too. Another aspect of light on the night sky is the energy it uses. So how can we reduce the light pollution and still be safe at night? Our ancestors would have seen the night sky every night. Knowledge of the night sky was essential for navigation, and as the stars became big characters in epic stories. Yet now, how often do we look up and see the constellations and the millions of stars in our night sky? So we're going to hear from various people or projects around Powis that have been involved in Dark Sky initiatives. And the first one to mention is B'nai B'rachai. And in fact, we don't have a representative from B'nai B'rachai here today, but we need to mention them because they were one of the first to be involved back in 2012, as they became the fifth place in the world to be accredited as an international dark sky community. So they're one of the first, and the first in the UK, or first in Wales. So on the in the B'nai B'rachai, you can see the Milky Way, major constellations, nebulas and meteor showers, and it has some of the highest quality dark skies in the whole of the UK. So there's many reasons the park used to justify working on the project. It was both to preserve the night sky for future generations, but also to help reduce carbon emissions from the energy consumption of lighting and to protect all of the wildlife effects that we will hear more about this morning. So, but I'm going to pass across to the projects that are going to talk about this in more detail. We've got three people that will be introduced in sequence this morning. We've got Lee Harley-Bowen, who is going to talk about Prestine and talk about the Dark Skies Initiative more widely. We've got Fiona Stone from the Radnor Wildlife Trust to talk about more of the effect on wildlife, and Matt Gadfield, who is from Elan Valley, who will talk about the project that's taking place there. So I'm going to start off by introducing Lee Harley-Bowen. So welcome, Lee, and I think you're going to start by talking about the more widely about the Dark Skies Initiative.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good morning, everybody. I've really just got one takeaway this morning for everybody, and if you forget everything else today, just remember this, that darkness is a habitat in exactly the same way as a rainforest is a habitat. And once you start destroying the habitat, you start destroying the rainforest, and that has consequences. And those consequences, I think, we'll probably cover this morning in varying amounts of detail. But if you just take one thing away from today, is that darkness is important, and it is a habitat just as important as a rainforest is. The next thing I'd like to just mention is how I got into this in the first place. I'm a member of an astronomy club, March's Astronomy Group, and we meet up at the Space Guard Centre, which is just outside Knighton. The Space Guard Centre is a national centre. It's the national centre for, I think it's called for asteroids and near-Earth objects. That's what it's called. I suddenly went blank and forgot what it was called. National Centre for Near-Earth Objects. And what they do is they track asteroids and comets and try to identify the asteroid with our name on it, as it were. And I became aware of the fact that driving out from the Space Guard Centre, the lights from Prestine were interfering with the work that they were doing. And that sort of sowed a seed as to could we do anything about it? At the same time, I was actually working for Powys County Council and I was running their environmental management system then. And one of the requirements then was to write an environmental report once a year, which detailed the council's activity and their environmental impact. And then when I did that and I looked at the carbon footprint of Powys County Council, street lighting was up there along with transport and energy consumption in buildings. It was a high proportion of their carbon emissions, their greenhouse gas emissions. I then started to learn a little bit about the effects on wildlife and so on, and thought, well, there must be something that we can do about this. I contacted the Commission for Dark Skies, and they put me in touch with a genius lighting designer named Kieran, and we then started to work towards Prestine becoming a dark sky community. So, anybody got any questions or points?
Right.
Jeremy?
Yes, I should have said that during the presentations, if we can keep questions to the end of the presentation and put them in chat as well. But yes, if there are any questions at the moment for Lee, we can take them now. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next speaker. Yes, Fiona.
Only briefly, did you, when you took it on to make Prestine a dark skies town, did you take that on with Powys or with Prestine Council?
It was primarily the Prestine Council.
And so you put pressure on Powys through your town council?
Yeah, I'll cover that in a bit more detail in the talk, but yes, and we had varying success, but I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, Lee's going to be talking in more detail about the Prestine and Norton project just a bit further down the agenda. That's fine though. Well, shall we move on to Fiona now to talk more about the effect on wildlife? So Fiona, welcome to the workshop, and can I ask you to talk a bit about the reason for dark skies for the wildlife perspective? You're muted at the moment.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, had internet problems. Hello, I'm Fiona. I'm the local wildlife sites officer for Radnorshire Wildlife Trust. I've been asked to help today because I used to do bat surveys, quite a lot of bat surveys, 10 years. So got some experience of bats. So animals use their have evolved for millions of years, so they use natural light as cues. They might use the nocturnal animals might use the moon for or stars for navigation. Diurnal daytime animals might use the increased lighting in the morning to know that it's daytime, and decreased levels in the evening to know that it's time to go to roost or nest. Nocturnal animals will use the lower light in the evening to know that it's time to go out to forage, or males might start calling to attract females. And also, of course, they'll use the increased lighting in the morning to know that it's morning. So it's time to go back to the roost or so on. So I'll start with bats. that's one of my sorts of specialisms. So slower flying species of bats are the ones most associated with cluttered, dark environments like habitats like woods, such as lesser horseshoes, are most affected by light pollution. Um, also Myotis species, and then faster species of bat, such as the pipistrelles, are less affected by light pollution. They might be even light opportunistic. They might feed around lights because moths are attracted to lights. The trouble is that these lights create a vacuum of moths around further away from the lights. So artificial lighting at bat roosts might cause bats to leave the bat roost later. It can also sort of form a barrier for their foraging routes. Some bat species may not even leave the roost if artificial lighting suddenly arrives, and they may even desert a roost. So, if bats leave the bat roost later, they might have less time for foraging. The main peak of the insects is straight after dusk, so if they leave the roost later, they'll have less foraging time. This can affect their reproduction rates and cause slower growth rates and even starvation of young, possibly. So it can affect their population levels. Invertebrates can also be affected. Moths are as I said, are attracted to blue lights. Moths are very important pollinators because they pollinate in the day and at night. So this can affect their breeding, feeding of moths, and their population levels. So with one light, there could be 62% less pollination in that area. So, I was researching a bit on the dark skies, and it said that light pollution can also affect fireflies. So I was wondering if it possibly affected glowworms because they also emit light to attract mates. So possibly affects glowworms in this country. It also affects dung beetles, butterflies, particularly migrating species such as monarchs, other insects and sweat bees. So, birds are also affected, particularly migrating birds, because it can take them off route. It can the lights will attract them and also disorientate them. So 100 million or up to 200 billion possibly birds are killed each year. They think that's an underestimate because obviously they can't find every dead bird. So this is an estimate. Because they're attracted to the light, this can cause collisions. They can fly into lit windows and get killed, unfortunately. So it also affects owls, particularly nocturnal owls. Barn owls are quite pale in colour, so they have specially adapted feathers that means that they're completely silent when they fly. But if the artificial lights light up the owl, then the prey can see them. So this can affect their feeding, reduce their hunting success. So, then there's no point being quiet then if they can be seen because they're lit up by the light. Yes, as I said, birds also already use the natural cues to determine the seasons and the breeding season, so it can affect them in that way. Peregrines have been recorded hunting in lit environments like cities, which I mean, if they're taking pigeons, that's possibly not such a problem, but if they're taking bats, then obviously that's not good because some species of bat are struggling. So artificial lighting also affects seabirds. Plants have evolved to use the seasonal cues of changing day and night lengths to match their development and breeding programs to the seasons of the day and the night. And light pollution stops them from using these cues, so breeding is compromised or prevented. They also prepare for the winter and using these light levels, and if it's affected by artificial light, then they may not be able to survive the winter. Atlantic salmon, so artificial light can change their natural migration patterns and make them more random. Turtles, obviously not in the UK, but I worked with turtles in Greece for a month, and the hatchlings are evolved to move towards, in order to find the sea, they use the light reflected off the ocean and move towards that. But with the artificial light from hotels, then they go the opposite way, the wrong way, and go towards the hotels and possibly roads, and they may get run over, unfortunately. So yeah, it upsets their natural rhythms. Other species that are affected are frogs, toads, particularly nocturnal ones, zooplankton, mice, and internationally zebrafish and hummingbirds. I won't talk about humans so much because that's probably covered later in the workshop, but increased lighting at night can cause health problems such as insomnia, depression, and possibly even cancer. So, and yeah, I won't cover lighting because that's probably covered later on, but lesser horseshoes, even lesser horseshoes will avoid all lighting and even red lighting, whereas other species can cope with red lighting. Okay. Right, any questions?
Thanks, Fiona. That's great. I've got one question to start with. To what extent, because when you have bright moonlight on a night, it can be as bright. Well, I don't know whether it's as bright as you find artificial light being, but does moonlight affect wildlife in the same way?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the comparison with the lux levels. That's probably on the Bat Conservation Trust website, but there's a good manual on there, bats and lighting, a good manual on there. I know it affects, I know moonlight affects owls and their hunting success. I'm not sure, I expect it wouldn't affect some species of bat, like pipistrelle, or noctule, open flying bats, but yes, I would imagine it would affect yeah, the cluttered species like lesser horseshoes. I think I'm sure it affects the barbastelle, but the barbastelles are understudied, due to the low numbers. So we don't have data on that.
Yeah,
so.
I guess it's more intermittent, so that it would only affect a few nights a month, whereas artificial lighting is constant, maybe.
Every night, yes, yeah.
Any other questions? Lee, do you want to come in?
If I could come in here, yeah. Moonlight is deceptive because your eyes adapt quite quickly to light. It feels as if it's very, very bright, if say a full moon, but it is deceptive. It's sort of an order of magnitude less bright than a street light.
Okay.
So you can get fooled thinking it's brighter than it actually is.
Okay.
And some nights will be cloudy.
Any other questions for Fiona at the moment? I can't see any at the moment. In that case, can I now bring you in, Lee, to talk more about your project in Preston and Norton? You're muted, Lee.
Sorry about that. I thought Matt was giving a presentation next.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I've got my ordering wrong. So yes, the next is Matt Gadfield. So yes, Matt, can I introduce you? You're from the Elan Valley and going to talk about the Dark Skies project in Elan Valley. So welcome, Matt. Please go ahead.
Second. Right, you can all hear me now? Okay, I'll just share the screen because I have a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, well,
we can
hello
see that full screen now.
Sunny Elan, almost sunny Elan Valley. My name is Matt Gadfield, and I am part of the Dark Skies team here. Our job is to promote and protect the beautiful night skies the area enjoys, and we are in fact fortunate enough to be living under some of the darkest skies in Europe, here in the heart of Mid Wales. So I'm going to be talking about the work my colleague and I do to promote and protect them. Now, the Ellan Valley International Dark Sky Park is managed by the Ellan Valley Trust on behalf of Welsh Water. They're our landlords. That's the way it's set up. Dark Sky is the American-based organization who essentially hand out the dark sky statuses. Obviously, you have to prove that you're worthy of one, but they're the ones who administer that side of it. We are the first privately owned but publicly accessible dark sky park in the UK. And in fact, you see the green boundary there, that's the boundary of the Ellan estate. Quick history lesson here. I don't know if anyone is aware of it. The land was bought in the latter half of the 19th century by the city of Birmingham to guarantee that the reservoirs they were going to build would collect clean drinking water. The Ellan Valley Trust was formed in 1989 and manages the Ellan estate on a 999-year lease. Dams and reservoirs are owned by Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water, and the principal function is to provide a clean drinking water supply. Now, of course, all that hard work we put into keeping the water clean has some very pleasant fringe benefits, such as we are part of the Cambrian Mountains environmentally sensitive area. We have a national nature reserve on our patch, on the Clairwyn. We have some special areas of conservation for habitats. We have a special protection area for wild birds. We have multiple sites of special scientific interest. We have some Coronation Meadows. And last but certainly not least, we're an international dark sky park. The vast majority of the estate is a core area with a small buffer zone to the southwest, the core area being where natural darkness occurs. The buffer zone, as you can see here, is Ellan Village and the Visitor Centre. This is the main area of habitation on the Ellan estate, so there is lighting on the utility buildings, commercial buildings, domestic properties, and indeed street lighting here. We're hoping that the buffer zone could be reduced by improvements in that lighting, such as park night street lighting, redesigning outdoor lighting on domestic, commercial and utility buildings, and so on. Second on next. Now, work to create the Ellan Dark Sky Park began in 2010-2011 with the application, and it involved the three people you see here. Saoirse Lewis in the middle there kicked off the process by obtaining letters of recommendation from authorities and getting communities together to support the creation. She then handed over to Chris and Les Fry, other side of her there, who volunteered, created the 140-page application and reported SQM readings, ran events, took lighting surveys, and as a result of all the hard work, the estate was awarded International Dark Sky Park Silver Tier in 2015. Now, our obligations as a dark sky park, because they don't just give you the status, we have to do things with it and for it. We have to monitor the sky brightness. Several times a year, somebody has to pop out with this little device here, which is called a Sky Quality Meter, SQM. It's a bit like a photographic light meter. Several times a year, somebody will usually Sam will go out, patrol the estate with the meter, monitor light levels, and ensure that we haven't had any more light pollution since last time. The higher the number on the meter, the better. For example, an average SQM on the Ellan estate is 21.5 NP SAS. That's essentially a measure of lighting intensity. And the meter itself maxes out at 22.0, so we're pretty good. We also have to submit an annual report to Dark Sky International. That's not only including our light meter readings, our sky quality meter readings even, but also events that we've run, outreach work we do, essentially anything we are doing to promote the concept of dark sky parks and ours in particular. We're monitoring external lighting on buildings to reach 100% compliancy. And as I said, we run public outreach events such as stargazing talks. We have a mobile planetarium we take to schools, which I'll be talking about later. And as you'd expect in the modern age, we're active on social media. Discover Ellan is a brand that was created to basically promote the estate from a visitor viewpoint, for both our nature, wildlife, bird watching, and our dark sky work. And of course, we have our old school website at the bottom. Now, this photograph shows that buffer zone I was talking about around Ellen Village. As you might notice, there are different colours of lighting here. Well, the warm white, the more orangey yellow stuff, is lighting that Powys County Council installed a few years ago, replacing blue-white LED lights, which are the brighter colour things. Not only is the colour temperature more helpful in terms of, as Lee's already explained, the colour temperature is more helpful, but also the lights dim after midnight up to 50%. And you could see how much better the full cut-off lighting that Powys installed is at mitigating upwards glare. You notice that around the warm white lighting, it's concentrated on the ground, of course, where we need it, whereas the other blue-white fittings, the older fittings, are tending to sort of splurge away, aren't they, rather than simply illuminate where we want to see. We are liaising with the owners of those buildings about making their lighting more dark sky friendly. Now, here's a little case study. Speaking of lighting, this is one of the cottages on the estate that is managed by the trust. And many of them still have these old-fashioned bulkhead lamp fittings, as you can see at the top of the wall there. So when one of those breaks, we will replace it with a full cut-off light, such as these ones. This is a fairly simple LED panel, but angled directly downwards, and that's one of the simplest things you could do if you have any outdoor lighting. If you can aim it straight down, please do so, because it will not only mean that it's lighting where you need to see and reducing glare, it'll also make it easier for you to see because you haven't got this bright light in your eyes now. The plan is to balance the needs of our tenants to be able to see where they're going at night, because obviously it's a farming area and farming does not stop when the sun goes down, but at the same time reducing the light pollution. Now, we were talking about the colour temperature of lights earlier on, and this graphic gives a good demonstration of it. If you notice, as you move towards the left-hand end, the light is becoming warmer in tone. In fact, the recommendation that has changed slightly since this graphic was produced is that you should pick lights around the 2700 Kelvin mark. The numbers at the bottom are in Kelvin. Really, it's a light anything warmer tone, because if you think about it, our bodies have evolved over millions of years to regard sunset as an indication that it's time to wind down for rest and sleep. So if you pick lighting that is similar in tone to a sunset, it's going to help. So moving on, how do you educate people about the Ellen Valley and our dark sky? Well, here are some of the things we do. We run daytime events. These are images from an event we ran a couple of years ago, no, last October even, for a partial solar eclipse. So we had filtered telescopes so that people could safely observe the sun. And the image on the right-hand side of your screen was taken through one of those. You can just see the moon hiding past the sun there. We also had the physics club from Aberystwyth University, Physics Society from Aberystwyth University, come over to help us out with some talks and essentially more people to operate telescopes and spread the word. In fact, we're going to be repeating that on a similar basis this year. 29th of March, there is a partial solar eclipse. We will be setting our telescopes up at the Ellen Visitor Centre between 10 and 10 a.m, 12 noon. So if any of you are free on the day, please come and say hello. Other events we've run include exhibitions. This was connected to the anniversary of the moon landings. So as you could see, we not only looked at the space side of it, but we also looked at the social history side of it, because that's quite a good way of getting people hooked in, as you show them things that they remember. We've also hosted astrophotography exhibitions, such as this one. These are images of the Allen estate taken by a variety of photographers. And now on to our favourite part of the job, public outreach, showing people the night sky through guided constellation tours, teaching them to use binoculars, giving them a guided tour of galaxy, star clusters and nebulae through our telescopes. We run nighttime events as well, public and private. These two people were guests staying at Cwmclwyd Bunkhouse, our new accommodation on the Elan Valley estate. They live in Birmingham. Many of them had never seen a properly dark night sky before. So not only were we able to show them structure in the Milky Way, they were able to watch the Perseid meteor shower too. This is another one of our venues this is a public outreach event. We ran a year or so ago at Cosmic Kutch. It's a remote hilltop location with a stargazing shelter. As you could see, we use red lighting inside the building because that preserves your night vision and also means that you can find the tea urn without burning yourself. In fact, we run as many events as we can up here because it's such a wonderful location. This photograph was taken on the 12th of August last year, and it turned into a wonderful evening because not only did our guests see Persean meteors, but we also managed to show them a spectacular display of the Aurora Borealis towards the end of the evening. Our mission is to educate people about dark skies and the problem of light pollution, but also to facilitate access on the Allen estate so visitors can discover the night sky for themselves. Night visitors can use the four-sided seasonal star maps that have been designed to show you what is in the night sky at that particular site. The idea behind these being that you don't need a telescope to get involved in astronomy. This is something I'm always quite passionate about, is pointing out that you do not need to spend an enormous amount of money on gear. In fact, and that's what these panels are intended to show. This one can be rotated to show the relevant time of year and gives you a quick crash course in what constellations you could expect to find. With the unaided eye in a dark sky, you'll be able to see a galaxy too, quite faintly, but they will be visible. Nebulae such as the Orion Nebula, star clusters, and dust lanes in the summer Milky Way, which is what I meant earlier by structure. In fact, you could even see parts of the Milky Way in the winter. All you need to do is find car park on the Allen estate, switch off, turn all lights off, step outside, let your eyes adapt to the darkness. It takes around half an hour for your eyes to become fully dark adapted, but you will notice a difference very quickly. It just gets better and better. Don't look at your phone because that will put your eyes straight back into daytime mode. Now here's the other part of work. I mentioned the planetarium shows earlier. This is actually one we ran as part of a public event at Reading Leisure Centre a couple of years ago. You can see my colleague Sam guiding our visitors into the dome. I was sitting there ready to welcome them. We also take this out to schools, mostly Key Stage 1 and 2 at the moment. We would welcome inquiries, obviously. We offer this as part of our educational service offering as a charity. Our shows are usually based on light pollution. We always start with a piece about that. Then they will veer into what's in the night sky at the moment, as in things that our audience might be able to see if they go out of the back garden, if it's clear that night. The solar system. You can see we have Jupiter up there on the top of the dome. That's always a popular one. And constellation mythology, because every culture that has ever existed on this planet has looked at the stars and attached their own stories to them. And sometimes the kids get really enthusiastic about it, as you could see with this little mob. I think it was Franksbridge School last year. So where do we go from here? Well, celebrating 10 years of our International Dark Sky Park status. We're planning a big event for the 29th of June at the Allen Visitor Centre. So again, if you're free, please come along and say hello. Should be good fun. We're going to continue to work with Powys, Dŵr Cymru, Welsh Water and Severn Trent to reduce the excess light pollution in the buffer zone. Those white splodges that you saw in the photograph earlier. We will reach full compliance with our own lighting management and work with other stakeholders in the valley to reduce light pollution further. As I showed you, we are in the process of replacing light fittings as and when they are faulty. We'll work with various partners, such as today's workshop, to increase dark sky awareness outside the Allen estate. And we have other plans in the pipeline, simply too early to announce. As the saying goes, watch this space. Share. I think
Excellent.
that's
Thank you very much,
Right.
Matt, for that. So we've got an opportunity now for a few questions to Matt, if anyone has any questions they'd like to raise. Lee.
these.
Hi there, Matt.
Oh.
Just a quick question. I'm working with John Beddoes School to incorporate dark sky education into the high school.
Good.
I'm sure they would be very interested in your planetarium, so I'd be grateful if you could contact me.
Okay, if you talk to Sam, because she handles the bookings, and yeah, we have been to Prestine. We went to their primary school last year, I think it was. Yeah, and they enjoyed it hugely.
Great.
Any other questions? Fiona.
Hi, just to ask, can you clarify your SQM? You say the higher the better, and I would have thought the number should have been the lower the better. So it's obviously not measuring light. What's it measuring?
That's a really good question. I don't know exactly, but basically the higher the number, the darker the skies. So
Okay.
it's kind of, I think it's kind of measuring this balance between man-made light pollution and also natural light pollution, such as the moon, and also natural starlight. So it's a bit of a kind of a balance. So basically, if you say stood in the center of London and press that SQM, you'd probably get a reading of around 8.9 PSAS. Whereas around here, you will get anywhere between 21.5. So the higher the number, it means the darker the skies.
Okay.
The highest number you can get is if you stand in the middle of the Arizona desert or somewhere in the sub-Sahara. And we're not quite at that stage yet.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Jamie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. That was a really great talk, Matt. Thanks.
Thank you.
Big question, money. How do you fund it all?
Right, so this is where I can answer the question, because I'm the dark sky officer, and it's kind of like part of my full-time job. I do lots of other things for the charity. If you work for a charity, as people may know here, you have to wear many hats. So part of my hat is obviously working dark skies and managing the Dark Sky Park. So 2017, I joined the team. And fortunately, we were receiving various pots of funding. So we have to apply for funding. There's some funding in the pipeline at the moment I can't really announce. It's not a great amount, but we've got a project we want to implement for public outreach. The two pots of funding we had previously was TICE and Data Stay, sort of government funding, which enabled us to buy our planetarium. Our planetarium wasn't brand new because it costs, I think if you buy a planetarium these days, it costs like
75,000.
a deposit for a house, basically. They're hugely expensive. So we bought a second-hand planetarium, which obviously works very well. We have to keep tweaking it to make it work. We bought telescopes and various other things. And we obviously were able to get funding for signage as well. So obviously we had to match that funding. So yeah, it has been just grant funding that we've applied for. And obviously before we left the EU, there was lots of money around. There's not so much now. So we're having to tighten our belts a little bit.
I've just got a brief question about the planetarium, actually. How many people can fit into the planetarium?
Well, it says they start to say around 35 children and a couple of adults.
We're not sure they're going to fit 35 in.
We want everyone to be comfortable. Obviously, sometimes the show, it's really nice to lay down and watch everything whizzing around above your head. So we say ideally around 20 to 22 primary school children, teacher and Matt and I, because we run the shows between ourselves, otherwise we'd run out of voice. Our voices get a bit hoarse towards the end of the day. So yeah, it's around 22 children and a few adults. So just to make it comfortable.
And how big a space do you need to set it up?
So the planetarium dome is 5 meters in diameter and 3.2 meters high, but we need a clearance space above. Obviously, you don't want the lights burning in the planetarium dome. dome, and we need at least 2 meters space around for safety reasons if the power goes out. Obviously, we don't want people to panic and start running into walls and stuff. And I know that some of our other people who run Plantech will squeeze into smaller areas, but I like to have that space around because we need the space for the fan, for example, to inflate the dome, and just for safety,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions that people have got for Matt or Sam? Alan.
Yes, I just wondered whether you had any contact. I just can't remember his name now. Martin Griffiths used to be with South Wales.
The chap who wrote Dark Land, Dark Skies.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yes, I've read it. Sam may well have had contact with. I'm afraid I haven't personally. She's had to run off.
I've lost a bit of contact with him. So he used to come to Hey U3A and give presentations about all sorts of things dealing with astronomy. He had a package of slides, and you just present a thing off the cuff. I don't know if you come across him. He's well worth making contact with. He's a great guy.
Yeah, my colleague Sam will certainly have had contact with him, but I don't think I've met him. I might have forgotten. No, Sam's had to run off because it's a changeover day for the holiday lets on the estate, so she's dealing with the admin of that as well as she's back.
I've done a market research at Elan Valley
yes.
for a visitor survey. It hasn't involved Dark Sky, but I know it well. The other thing was it's not directly related to Dark Skies, I suppose. Any contact with the open space at Kitchener Knighton, the telescope people up there?
The Space Guard Centre?
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
So what was your question again? Sorry.
Well,
I don't know. Do you have any contact with them or?
Yes. So not recently, but we have been in touch with Jay Tate on and off over the years. He was He gave us a letter of support for the application for the International Dark Sky Park way back in 2015, 2014. And he's kind of sat in on meetings that we've had to, discuss these things. But yes, we have had, we have kind of liaised together about various things. Yes.
Good. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much then, Matt. And we better move on because we've still got quite a lot to cover, actually. So, so can I now bring in again Lee at the right place this time? Lee, do you want to tell us a bit about the Preston and Norton project?
Hi there. I will whiz through this because both Fiona and Matt have covered a lot about what I was going to talk about. So without further ado, I'll try and... There we go. Right. Okay. I hope everybody can see that.
Yes, we can see that fine.
Preston Dark Skies, or in other words, how local communities are working towards improving the environment by limiting light pollution. It's the old act local, think global thing, really. And come on, it's frozen, fortunately. Right, okay. Right, sorry about that. It didn't want to work. I thought I'd just show a map of Wales, mainly really to show how dark Wales is. And you can see on this image all of the different dark sky areas. You can see Preston and Norton dark sky community towards the east, and going north to south, Erie, and the Elan Valley, of course, and then the Bannow-Brycheiniog dark sky area. One of the things I was curious about really was going back to dark skies being a habitat. If you can imagine Wales as a rainforest, you can see both in the north and the south that rainforest slowly being eaten away by the loggers with the bright lights and so on, with the urban conurbations. And I thought that was a good sort of example of how, as a habitat, it was being eaten into. Another quick look, there's a couple of new dark sky communities. Gower down in the south there, which was designated in January of this year. And up in the north, we've got the Dee Valley National Landscape. That's working through the process now of becoming a dark sky community. So we wait with bated breath on that one. So why has light pollution increased over the last 20 years? Well, as Matt alluded to, proliferation of light-emitting diode street lamps. The light-emitting diode was invented in around about 1962 by an American physicist called Nick Holoniak. He also invented the diode laser, which you get in all your DVD players and CD players as well. But it wasn't until the early 2000s, around about 2007, 2008, that it started to be used in street lighting. The first generation LED street lights produced a blue-white coloured light, very polluting, produced a lot of glare and a lot of deep shadows, and a lot of sky glow. So they weren't really suitable. The thing in their favour was their cheapness. They were very cheap to install, very cheap to run. County councils would find that they could install virtually two for the price of one old sodium lamp or old mercury lamp. And there weren't issues with LEDs like there were with sodium and mercury lamps. Mercury lamps are classed as hazardous waste, so they're difficult to get rid of. So they started to proliferate in the belief that it's not crime, primarily. But also there was another measure, and this is something which I call the unintended consequences measure, and that is road safety. Any of you who have been on a driver awareness course will know what streetlights mean. Streetlights mean that it's a 30-mile-an-hour limit. So during the late part of the 20th century and early part of the 2000s, county councils were very keen on road safety measures. So what they did was that they increased the number of streetlights to increase the amount of 30-mile-an-hour zones within towns and also in the countryside. I can remember when I first moved to Norton, just outside Preston in 1997. It was complete darkness there. There was not a street light in the village. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face, which was great because I was an astronomer and I really enjoyed that. However, by around about 2000, 2002, streetlights started to pop up in the village like toadstools. And that was because the county council wanted to enforce a 30-mile-an-hour limit within the village. So the consequence of that was light pollution. So what, as Matt said, what we need is a lower color temperature street light. And this is something that we've been investigating. To mirror what Matt said, you need a low color temperature for your street lights, ideally between 2200 and 2700 Kelvin. So it's on the left-hand side of this screen here. You don't want anything up on the right-hand side around about 6000 because that causes an awful lot of problems. Also, it's not just the color, but it's also whether the lights are what are called cut off, i.e. they're shielded. So you want to have light where it's needed and not scattered up into the sky. And also, of course, you want warm temperatures as well. And then again, as Matt was saying, you need to have a think about domestic and also agricultural farm alternatives as well. The number of bulkhead lights I see, which are like the ones on the left, when I drive around, is amazing. And they're spilling light out everywhere. What you need is a light like the one on the right, which directs the light where it's needed. Also an LED light bulb, which and you can buy them quite easily, which gives a warm white color, which is around about 2700 Kelvin or lower. And that is just ideal for external lighting. So let's have a think about the cost of lighting up the night sky. Well, they are around about 7.5 million streetlights in the UK. And typically they waste 15 to 20% of their light, which causes sky glow, goes up into the air. In terms of power consumption, around about 15%, 15% of the power consumption at night globally is caused by street lighting. So 15% of the power consumption at night is caused by street lighting, which is quite a significant amount. The cost of street lighting, if you take into account street, domestic and commercial lighting, exceeds £1 billion a year to the UK economy. And if you take into account greenhouse gas emissions from producing that street lighting, you're looking at around about 800,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide, which sounds a lot, and it is a lot. But if you were, say, to convert it into tonnes of coal, you're looking at between 300,000 and 500,000 tonnes of coal consumed in producing this light, wasted light going up into the night sky. It's enough coal to power a 500 megawatt power station for about 3 to 4 months, just to light up the night sky. But it doesn't have to be this way, as we will see going on. Wildlife, well, Fiona has spoken about birds, bats, insects and invertebrates. I won't say very much about that, apart from saying that 60% of the world's biodiversity depends on dark skies. 60%. And we're destroying that as a habitat. Human health. Blue-white light has an effect on melatonin in the brain. Melatonin is part of the body's endocrine system. And there is a balance between melatonin and serotonin in the brain. Increases in melatonin can stop you sleeping and cause insomnia. Changing the balance between serotonin and melatonin in the brain can cause depression and is one of the origins of bipolar disease. And because your endocrine system is all linked up together, it affects the hormones of the body. It can cause high blood pressure, and work in the States has shown that it can have an effect on prostate and breast cancer as well. So it's quite a significant area of investigation. So measuring light pollution. Light pollution is measured by what is called the Bortle scale, or people call it the bottle scale. And it goes from number 1, which is an excellent dark sky site, as shown on the left here, all the way through to the inner city, which you can't see any stars at all. So this is another familiar slide. This is a sky quality meter, as Matt mentioned earlier on. It measures the darkness in magnitudes per square arc second. The higher the figure, the darker the sky. This particular instrument is very useful if you want to find out what the faintest star is that you can see under different conditions at any one point during the night. It's called the limiting magnitude, the night limiting magnitude. And so you can actually calculate the faintest star you can see using this meter. Going back to the Bortle scale again, readings with that light meter, for a dark sky site, you need somewhere between 21 and 22 on the meter reading, and that's what you'd expect to get in a site 1 or site 2 dark sky site. The readings then just drop off then, say around about 19 for a rural sky, and then it slowly decreases down to around about 14, 13 for a suburban or inner city sky. So it gives you a really good indication of just how bright the street lights are and how dark the night sky is. These meters can be purchased, and they cost around about £150, something like that. I'll give you my contact details, my email address at the end of the talk, and if anybody wants to find out how you can purchase one, then I'll be pleased to let them know. Town councils might want to purchase one in the going forward, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So why did we want to go into Preston Dark Skies? Well, we wanted to reduce light pollution by using appropriate street lights, appropriate colour. We wanted to have a positive effect on the environment, wildlife and human health, and also not just environmental aspects, but we wanted to make the place a better place to live through the use of appropriate lighting design and enhance the heritage architecture of the place as well. And finally, wanted to make Prestine a special place for people to visit and to promote ecotourism. And I'll be talking to Jamie Ramsey a little later about what we've done to that effect. So how did we go about addressing this? Well, I was put in touch with Kieran, who ran a lighting consultancy by the Commission for Dark Skies. And we came up with a cunning plan, and we started to lobby the town council, and they quickly came on board. They could see the advantages of it. And then collectively, we went to knock on the door of Powys County Council. And we asked them to replace the streetlights, and we gave all the really good reasons why we ought to do. And Powys County Council were very understanding. They supported us 100%. But unfortunately, they said they hadn't got any money, and they very politely told us to go away. It went quiet then for about a year, but unbeknown to us, the Welsh Government were getting interested in dark skies and interested in dark sky compliant streetlights, and they then approached Powys County Council with some money and said, we want to do a pilot. And of course, because we put our heads above the parapet, they came to us and said, would you like to have your streetlights changed? And we obviously jumped at the opportunity there. And in 2022, they changed all the streetlights with 2,200 Kelvin dark sky compliant streetlights. Now, we were the first community in Powys and possibly Wales to have dark sky street lighting. And importantly, because we had measured the amount of light pollution before and after the street lights had been installed, we were in a position to show how the lighting, the amount of light pollution had decreased and how the lighting had improved. And this put us in good stead for later on when we applied to become a dark sky community. And you can see here from this map, the figures in green were taken in 2023, those in orange were 2021. And you can see the figures, generally speaking, in green are higher than those in orange, which proves that the skies are darker. It proves that there's less light pollution. But there are a couple of anomalies there, and you can see those in red. And you might wonder, well, why has there been a decrease in lighting efficiency? Why is there more light pollution? Well, interestingly, when Powys County Council came in and they changed all the street lights with dark sky compliant lights, they also mended the lights which weren't working. So where you've got the red figures there, when I initially took light pollution readings, there wasn't a street light there. But when I came back to take them after the street lights had been replaced, there was a street light there because Powys County Council amended all the street lights. So that's the reason why we've got figures there which are in red, which shows a decrease in light quality. So we then put together an application to Dark Sky International, become a dark sky community, and Kieran of Dark Source Lighting, he did the majority of the work, I'm glad to say, on that, because it was quite a technical document. And I'm pleased to say that in January 2024, we were awarded International Dark Sky status and the first dark sky community in England and Wales. And that is there below the logo that we are now allowed to put up around the town, and also put on our town council headed paper and stuff like that. So what are the benefits? Well, because these new dark sky lights use less energy, we've been able to save around about 20,000 kilowatt hours a year in energy, which translated into cost savings is around about 8,000 or so pounds a year. Probably more now, obviously, because energy costs keep going up and up. And so I would say it's probably 9 to 10,000 now, I would think. But more importantly, we were able to make a saving on greenhouse gas emissions, and over a year we save around about 4.5 tons of carbon dioxide a year, something along those lines. And just bear in mind, this is a small community of around about 2,700 people. Just imagine the savings that could be made if this scheme was rolled out across Wales, or indeed across the United Kingdom. There would be a substantial saving in greenhouse gas emissions. So what does it look like? Well, the lighting in the community was photographed before and afterwards, and you can see on the left the assembly rooms in Prestine, and the amount of glare and deep shadows you can see there in the lighting before it was changed, and how I think it's a lot warmer, it's a lot more human scale, the lighting now, and how much friendlier it looks, and you can see as well, you can actually see into the shadows as well. You're not blinded by the glare. If you look at the right hand top picture, that's the High Street in Prestine. Look at the bunting there. You can see it like in daytime. Look at the photo below. You can hardly see it at all. There is no glare, no reflections going up into the night sky to light it up. Really significant, really significant. But it's not just the quality of the light per se. It's improving the heritage of the town as well. This is a view of Broad Street in Prestine, looking south. The star right in the distance there is actually the planet Jupiter. You can see this heritage lighting. The heritage lighting is shown on the right here. We wanted to make significant improvements to the lighting in Broad Street because it's one of the finest Georgian and early Victorian streets in Wales. Powys trialled a few lights in Broad Street, and to be honest, they weren't very good. They looked pretty naff. We had a bit of a consultation, and during the dark sky application process, we did a bit of crowdfunding, and we raised some money. We raised about £1,500 via crowdfunding, and with some money that Prestine Town Council had, we were able to raise the specification of these lights. And as you can see from the right-hand photo there, they're all shielded. They look like lamps, but effectively they look like gas lamps when they were installed, and they give a really nice Victorian ambience to the town's main street, Broad Street. And something I say that you know, if Sherlock Holmes was transported to Prestine in Broad Street, he would feel very much at home there. This, of course, resulted in quite a bit of publicity, and we had 2 visits from the BBC, one before and one after we were accredited. And also, strangely, we had a visit from TF1, which is a French national news channel, a bit like BBC News, and they came in and they did some interviews with myself and other people in Prestine about Prestine as a dark sky community. TF1 are based in Paris, and we had quite a substantial piece on French national television, which put Prestine on the map in France, which is amazing, really, considering it's just a tiny little town in the middle of Paris. So, what about the future? Well, what about dark sky street lighting in Paris? Well, Paris County Council have committed themselves, they've pledged themselves to changing all the street lights in Paris to dark skies compliant street lights by 2030. So, for example, this year, Talgarth is going to have its street lights replaced. In 2026, Rhayader is, and I think in 2028, 2029, Knighton is, just as examples. So what does that mean for communities? Well, it's an opportunity here for other communities in Paris to become dark skies communities. But what they've got to do is they need to get a baseline of the amount of light pollution their town makes. And what they need to do is to take light pollution measurements before the street lights are changed if they want to become dark skies communities. That's something which they can do and then decide later on whether they want to go the whole hog down the road of becoming a fully fledged international dark sky community. But I think it's important to stress that they need to measure their baseline before the lighting, the new street lighting goes in. So what about cities? I mean, a few years ago, cities would have been a no-no. People, you'd have said, well, let's have dark skies in cities, and people just would have laughed at you. But there is slowly a movement, and the movement is called the Biophilic Cities Organization. And I've got the website address here. The Biophilic Cities Organization makes room for nature in cities. And in the United Kingdom, there are only 2 biophilic cities, one of which is Edinburgh and one is Birmingham. Now, I was at a Dark Skies conference down in Cardiff this year, and I could see that making a city a biophilic city would be a foot in the door for the introduction of dark skies lighting within cities. And I pushed very hard for Cardiff to be the United Kingdom's 3rd biophilic city. I don't know how I'll get on with that, but I'll get back to you and let you know at some point. So what about dark sky Wales? Well, at the moment, around about 20% of Wales is classified as dark sky. And you can imagine if dark sky lighting, like what Powys is doing, is rolled out across Wales, then that would be a significant dark sky event and could possibly result in 50, 60, maybe 70% of Wales becoming dark skies if all of the lights were changed to dark sky compliant ones. So locally, what sort of further opportunities are there exist to enhance dark skies and wildlife? Well, this is a project that I have been working on, and it's really in its infancy at the moment, but it's this: a Mid Wales dark sky and wildlife corridor. I've been working on this with Radnorshire Wildlife Trust, and if you look at the map here, on the eastern edge, on the left-hand side, there is a proposed UNESCO Marches Biosphere Reserve. Hopefully we'll know a little bit more about that by the end of March, but it is quite an exciting venture, which is a joint venture between Radnorshire Wildlife Trust, Montgomery, Shropshire and Herefordshire Wildlife Trust to try and get this biosphere off the ground. Prestine is a dark sky place. Elan Valley is a dark sky place. Knighton would really like to become a dark sky place. And I can see that we could have a dark sky corridor which would run from Prestine in the east over to the Elan Valley in the west. I don't see this as a solid line, as it were, but more a wandering trail of breadcrumbs going across the county, slowly joining up these dark sky places for wildlife. Wildlife cannot exist in isolation. It needs corridors for it to move from place A to place B. And ultimately, I would like to see us moving east into England and into this biosphere, where you could see that you could have a corridor which would run all the way from the Biosphere Reserve all the way through to the Elan Valley. So that's quite exciting. Radisher Wildlife Trust are putting together a project plan at the moment. We're going to be looking at scoping it out, looking at mapping out where it ought to be going, looking at the various barriers that might exist to us putting this in. I'd really like to use this as a pilot. We're looking at an area or a length around about 40 kilometers, 25 miles long, and maybe using it as a pilot for maybe having a corridor that would join up with the Brecon Beacons with the Elan Valley. And I was at a conference earlier this week, and I was talking to the chief executive of the Brecon Beacons National Park, Catherine Mealing Lewis, about this, and she seemed quite receptive, which is interesting. So you might think, well, it's quite a big project, quite a long distance. Surely there's no precedent for doing this elsewhere, but there is, and it's quite an important one as well. If you look at this is a proposed 100-mile dark sky and wildlife corridor centered around the Knepp Estate in Sussex. If you go to the website Wheel to Waves, you'll see it in a bit more detail. But this is a magnificent project, again, making corridors for wildlife so that they can travel from place A to place B. The South Downs National Park is a dark sky place, and that will be incorporated into this dark sky corridor. So there is a precedent there, and I would like to have Radisher's equivalent to the Knepp Estate corridor in Paris. If you want to contact me, if you want details of light pollution meters, etc., or just want to have a chat, that's my email address. Please get in contact, and I'll stop sharing this now.